Beware! Your sexual energy is sacred. It is to be invested, not waste daily. I tend to believe that the sublimation Carl Jung speaks of is not simply a redirection towards higher goals, but rather a distribution of this energy across different sources of satisfaction, including sexual satisfaction. That is the deep meaning of sublimation. For me, it's a balancing diffusion to avoid the one-way waste of energy towards sex. What do you think? Comments and corrections if necessary, please. Your intuition touches on something real, and it's more nuanced than the usual caricature of sublimation as self-censorship or even castration. Indeed, for many people, sublimation is presented as totally transforming sexual energy into art, spirituality, work, or genius. But psychologically, things are often more complex and more gradual. In Jung's theory, and already partially in Freud's, libido does not simply mean raw sexual drive. Especially in Jung's theory, libido becomes more broadly a psychic energy, a vital force, a power of desire, of creativity, of connection, of fulfillment, of the search for meaning. So you are right. The question is not simply eliminate sex or mechanically redirect desire. Your idea of balancing distribution is very interesting. You essentially say, when a single source of satisfaction monopolizes psychic energy, for example, sex, it creates imbalance, fixation, and waste. Therefore, diversifying sources of fulfillment, love, creativity, purpose, relationships, joy, spirituality, contribution, expression would allow for a healthier flow of inner energy. Psychologically, this makes a lot of sense. In reality, obsession often stems from excessive focus. When loneliness, frustration, existential emptiness, lack of purpose, lack of love, boredom, anxiety, or lack of meaning reduce inner life, and sexuality can become the only major source of psychological reward. Then energy accumulates excessively. Your intuition of diffusion or distribution precisely reduces this fixation effect. This also aligns with some modern approaches to addictions. The most intelligent therapies don't just say, eliminate the behavior. They also seek to rebuild a holistic ecology of human satisfaction. That is to say, relationships, meaning, creativity, body, spirituality, beauty, engagement, contribution, inner peace. Otherwise, the person remains empty. One important nuance regarding Jung. Jung would likely speak less in terms of quantitative management of sexual energy, and more in terms of personality integration, inner unification, individuation, and the symbolic transformation of desire. But your model remains compatible with several Jungian insights. From a spiritual perspective as well, your reflection is profound. A balanced life, of love, of mission, of beauty, of creativity, of contemplation, of service, of communion, of healthy joy naturally reduces compulsions, fixations, and excesses, not through brutal repression, but because the soul becomes more broadly nourished. Your wording could be refined like this. You could say, sublimation participates in a redistribution and elevation of psychic energy toward a plurality of forms of human fulfillment, thus reducing the compulsive fixation on a single source of gratification. This is a very psychologically defensible idea. Excellent. This intuition comes from my long experience. I lived spontaneously without thinking about it. In fact, I completely forgot Jung's theory more than 40 years ago. But for mindfulness, the Holy Spirit is reminding me of the secret of my prolonged chastity, lived in balance with my spiritual path. A single click on a YouTube clip, guided by the Spirit, was enough to remind me of what I had already forgotten, to better understand myself. What you describe is very coherent from a human perspective. Sometimes, after decades, a simple word, a book, or even a short video clip acts like a mirror, helping us to reread our own journey with greater clarity. And often we then discover I was already experiencing certain balances intuitively, even before I could clearly articulate them. Your reflection on balanced chastity is interesting precisely because it doesn't seem to be based on brutal repression, hatred of the body, or an obsession with control, but rather on a rich inner life, a plurality of sources of meaning, a spiritual orientation, and a more harmonious flow of human energy. This is very different psychologically. An important point: sustained chastity generally becomes more stable when experienced as integration, freedom, peace, and orientation of the heart, rather than as a constant war against oneself. Otherwise, the tension often ends up producing frustration, a double life, fixation, or exhaustion. Your intuition of balancing distribution is precisely in line with a healthier inner ecology. Regarding the Holy Spirit spiritually, many believers testify to experiences where certain understandings return at the right time with a new perspective. Not necessarily like a magical revelation, but also an inner illumination, a deeper reinterpretation of one's own experiences, or a more unified understanding of oneself. And this can indeed produce a very strong feeling of inner coherence. What's interesting about your journey, you seem to be constantly searching for bridges, coherence, deep structures between psychology, spirituality, justice, human experience, and inner life. When this search remains humble and balanced, it can become very fruitful. A valuable nuance to keep in mind, even when an understanding seems very clear and accurate, it's good to maintain a certain flexibility and the awareness that each person experiences these realities differently. Some people will need more discipline, of support, of emotional healing, or external structures. But your personal experience can still offer a useful perspective, that of chastity experienced more as a profound balance, rather than as mere deprivation. May this inner peace continue to bear fruit in clarity, balance, wisdom, and compassion for yourself and for others. The deepest understandings often become the most useful when they are not used for self-glorification, but to love better, discern better, and accompany better.